Welcome to the Young Crone's Cafe, where you can get a magic brew full of all sorts of information, both witchy and practical.
Grab a cup of coffee and join us. I'm Elizabeth, a wordsmith.
And I'm Dave, a modern-day sage.
We are going to talk about various witchcraft and life topics from a slightly more mature perspective, at least most of the time.
Thanks for joining us. On the Path, which is the name for our personal witchcraft practices, we have spent a great deal of time discussing what we believe and why. These conversations led to the writing of a book full of information about our tradition. We call these beliefs Metaphysical Kernels of Thought because they are the start of much, much bigger ideas. We thought we would share some of these with you. So,
today's metaphysical kernel of thought is Esbat. The word Esbat originally showed up in the writings of Margaret Murray, a 20th century anthropologist who was attempting to write about the reconstructing of a witch cult in Western Europe. The word is supposedly related to the Old French sabatre, modern Esbat, meaning to frolic and amuse oneself or diversion. In modern practices, many associate the name with full moon rituals. The idea that witches gathered together to celebrate at this time of the month in the past is a romantic one and probably not reality. However, you can see where it might be practical to have as much natural light as possible if you are wandering through the woods to some supposed secret meeting place. Those of us on the path do use the word because we like the symmetry of Sabbat and Esbat. While Sabbats refer to specific dates of changing solar energies at the solstices and equinoxes, we use Esbat to refer to any ritual connected with the different phases of the moon and not just when it is full. We believe that you can have an Esbat at any time within the moon cycle and not limit yourself when working with its energy. For instance, if you are planning to work magic to draw something to you, an Esbat during the waxing moon might be a good idea. On the path, we also celebrate rituals at the time of the dark nights of the moon. First, we'll talk about the idea of an Esbat, which, as you can tell, comes from a French word and not something that's been around since before the dawn of time and is therefore super sacred.
Right.
I'm sorry. Well, there are probably people who consider the 20th century ancient history, which is okay too. But the idea of calling a moon ritual something other than we're getting together to celebrate the full moon always goes well. And we happened upon Esbat. It's been around a while, and it kind of almost alliterates with Sabbath. So you have Sabbats and Esbats depending on what you're talking about.
Oh my!
Yes, exactly. And
that was from Susie, by the way, if anybody is curious.
It was. She always liked when we rhymed things unintentionally.
Oh yeah.
Unintentionally.
Well, and it's interesting the way that you guys embraced the word Esbats, because the way that I had practiced in my own sort of solitary tradition is Sabbats were solar or about the sun, and Esbats were lunar about the moon. Mm-hmm. But I actually sort of was restricting myself to either doing my magic on either the full moon or on the new moon, depending upon the kind of magic that I was doing. And then I would support that magic through either the waxing period or the waning period, here again, depending upon the kind of magic that I'm doing. But when I read this part in the book, it sort of reminded me that there's no reason that I can't do an Esbat on any given Tuesday, just celebrating whatever state the moon is in at that time and trying to, channel or connect with that particular phase of the moon's energy. So even my daily meditation can change now because I can make myself aware of what the moon phase is, and what I've been doing is visualizing what direction the moon is, even if it's below the horizon. But it hadn't really occurred to me to do this on any given day. I sort of got caught up in the Esbats are the full moons and the new moons. So I love that you use the whole cycle of the moon as opposed to just 2 days of it.
Exactly. And the idea is, too, you can then create magic all the time. You're not restricted to, okay, I missed the full moon, so now I got to wait a month. Because
which is completely silly and exactly what I have done for decades.
Yeah, but lots of people get that because you come into this practice. Many times, if you're part of a group, they meet on the full moon. It's
sure
tradition. Everybody shows up. There's some sort of ritual involved. There may be magic involved. You're celebrating.
Well, it's on most people's calendars, so it's easy to spot and plan for, even if you're a soccer mom.
Exactly, and there's always that day before and day after, what you call a -1 and a +1. So that if, the group can't get together because the full moon is Tuesday and half of them are at the soccer game, you've always got a day or day in there.
Yeah, I've always been a big believer in the day means that day ±1.
Yeah, well, why not? The moon appears to be full if you look at it. Granted, if you're an astronomer, they know
sure
it's not completely full, or it's stopped being completely full, but you are just outside looking at the moon, damn it, it's full.
Right.
So we're going with what we can see, which is, I guess, practical on some basic level. But yeah, as I said, we got away from the idea that, like you said, to those days a month to celebrate the moon.
Yeah.
And the energy does change throughout the month.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was watching a couple of YouTube videos the other day that essentially I was looking for 3 or 4 different, I'm a very visual person, so I needed to see visual 3D or actually 4D because I needed the time and the motion, the calculus of it, to really understand again how the moon phases happen, so that what I'm ultimately trying to teach myself to do is be able to point wherever the moon is and wherever the sun is, regardless of the time of day, because me being aware of those two things is such a strong thing that connects me back to my divine spark of the divine.
Well, we all have those. Sue and I always used to call them touchstones. They're things that we do or things that we have that act as those reminders, or in your case, an amplifier of your personal energy. And we've created different ones over the years that we've used for various magical purposes or whatever. Like you said, you're very visual. I tend to be really tactile. And Sue was kind of a mixture of both. So she was happy. Oh, you found a rock that kind of matches the energy that we're playing with, kind of thing. Or she would draw. And I could see the...
Well, and looking back over, at least a decade's worth of you two doing ritual together, you bring a funny rock that has a texture to it, or something made of cloth, or something. I can see the tactile influence that you had on Susie.
Mm-hmm. And yes, we will not discuss that her handbag could have been considered a lethal weapon because she always had all the rocks in the bottom of it.
Yes, and I have all the rocks now.
Well, it's not a bad thing. Rocks can be fun.
So,
orientation to relate to rocks. It's like I never understood how she could grow everything.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think the best parts of practicing with somebody who compliments you. Sorry.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just wrapping back to topic, because we're wandering afield here a little bit, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but my takeaway is Sabbats are moments and they are solar. Esbats are lunar and can be any time, anywhere.
And they're also continuous.
That's what I'm saying. There is never a time when the moon doesn't have a phase.
Exactly.
I like the way that. I'm going to end on that.
I think that's a good place to stop.
There's never a time that you can't use the moon for your magic.
No, or just enjoy the moonlight.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
Exactly. Well, when you and I sat down to record this, we looked at it and said, it's a very short metaphysical kernel of thought. When we wrote our book, The Tradition of the Path, we created a number of separate topics. Some were longer and some were shorter and some are easier to kind of get through. The idea, though, is to consider each one as building blocks, I guess, for kind of how we see the world and how we practice. So we've decided we'll go on to the next one because we've been doing one per episode tonight just to continue on. So we are going to stick in the second metaphysical kernel of thought for the night, which is the cycles of the moon. Just as there is increasing and decreasing solar energy throughout the year with the intersecting Sabbats and cross-quarter times, so is there a corresponding monthly lunar cycle of the moon as it waxes and wanes. Although we have worked with solar energy to manifest longer-term magic, on the path we more often work with lunar energy for more immediate results. While many divide the phases of the moon into 4 parts, this is one where we actually work with a sacred 5. Our 5 phases are the dark nights of the moon, the new moon, the waxing moon, the full moon, and the waning moon. Each has a distinct energy signature that we connect with and move through each month for changes within ourselves, as well as when we choose to write spells and perform magic. For us, the 3 nights of the dark nights of the moon have an introspective energy, while the night of the new moon is that point which marks starting something new like projects or changes. The 14 days of the waxing moon are a period of increasing energy which can draw things into our lives that we need. The 3 nights of the full moon are full of manifesting energy, which makes them one of the strongest times for magical workings, which we frequently match with astrological energy for our workings. Finally, the 14 nights of the waning moon are a period of decreasing energy, which can assist us in removing things from our lives that no longer serve us in some way. Also, while the time frame makes for a consistent cycle of distinct energies, each moon is somewhat different depending on when it occurs throughout the year. We have solar increasing and decreasing energy. We have lunar increasing and decreasing energy. So it's almost like a cycle within a cycle.
I'm right there with you, but I just, as a kind of a side note, I don't want to give us off track already, but the increasing and decreasing of the moon's phase that we're going to talk about tonight, I should point out what we call increasing is increasing lit part of moon, decreasing not lit part of moon, because there's a positive and a negative or a light and a dark in there that I just want to make sure the language doesn't trip us up on.
I think so.
Because I can use the darkest time of the moon to do shadow work, things like that. So I just want to acknowledge that there is a dark part and a light part, even though we're usually going to talk about the measure of the light part.
I think so. That's a good way to describe it. You know, and we'll talk about that next week, specifically what we do with the dark nights of the moon. Because we celebrate that specific time frame. We made a conscious decision to work with that because very often various practices say, oh my God, you can't do anything on the dark nights of the moon. You can't do magic. You should just, kind of shut down and just don't do anything. And we were like, why? Who said? But that's just kind of our, kicking the authority.
Well, and I love that you deconstructed it and rebuilt it based on, where we live and what we observe and the seasonal stuff and whatnot that we share here. But I got to tell you, reading through the book, I got a little bit thrown on the 5 types or the 5 periods or whatever of the moon. So I was going to ask, and I know you did, like Nights of the Dark Moon or whatever, you and Susie, but I never really understood the whole 5 points. So could you kind of walk me through how that would